Right, hello, good morning, good evening, and good night. I hope you guys are doing absolutely fantastic because today we're going to be talking about Yieldmax investments. More specifically, are you able to retire off of our Yieldmax investments? So what I want to talk about in this video is I want to go over the ETFs that I actually own in my current portfolio. And the reason being is because I have some ETFs which are considered very stable, some which are maybe a little bit more on the riskier side, and some which provide me kind of intermittent monthly income, big boosts of monthly income. So what I want to talk about is through my own personal experience, do I think it's possible to live off of your Yieldmax investments and potentially retire? So that's what we're going to talk about in this video. We'll also kind of look at share prices of these underlying, let's say, ETFs. And as well, I also want to go over the distributions to see, okay, how much do Yieldmax ETFs really fluctuate, and could they be a potential consistent source of monthly income? So if that does sound good, we're currently up to 6,452 subscribers, 360 subscribers in the past 28 days. That is awesome. That's like a subscriber every day for the year, except we're knocking it down in 28 days. So thank you to everyone who subscribed. I really appreciate that. And nonetheless, let's get into this video because this is what you guys came to see. So in my portfolio, I currently, we're breaking barriers here. We're continuing to hold because the market has not opened. We're just up above $40,000. We currently have about a 13%, almost 14% gain on our total portfolio, which is awesome. That's what we want to see. And over time, this number should only increase if the market increases. But we hold 5 Yieldmax funds specifically: ULTY, YMAX, BABO, PYPY, and SQY. These are all very high yielding ETFs. We have YMAX at 66%, BABO at 53%, ULTY, one of the higher ones, at 105%. We have PYPY at, I'm pretty sure, yes, 39%, roughly 40%, and then SQY at 103%. So it's the second highest yielding out of my kind of Yieldmax ETFs. So in terms of distributions, what I've done here was I've taken both YMAX and BABO because YMAX, as you guys know, is a weekly pair. I receive weekly dividends from YMAX. So YMAX in itself could be considered a stable source of weekly and monthly income as it pays out weekly, and it's diversified across all the Yieldmax ETFs, meaning it holds BABO, it holds PYPY, and SQY. So without directly investing in these 3 Yieldmax ETFs, you are invested in the price returns when you buy YMAX, which I have currently about 835 shares of YMAX. But when looking into YMAX, the dividends are fairly consistent. But what I do want to point out here is that even YMAX is not safe from these big dividend falls. You see here in the past month, we received 15 cents, 24 cents, 30 cents, which was a huge dividend, and 23 cents. YMAX as a general hovers about 20 to 30 cents, but you notice here at the start of the month, paid out on November 8th, we got a dividend which was 12 cents. And if you're looking to potentially, let's say you need $2,000 a month in order to live, and every single week you're looking for about $500, if you're expecting a 20-cent dividend and you all of a sudden get a 12-cent dividend, that's roughly about $300. That's a huge dip. That could be potentially defaulting on your rent payments. So you need to have some sort of buffer when you're investing in Yieldmax ETFs. If I personally was to retire solely off of Yieldmax ETFs, I would look to have double the amount that I need in terms of monthly income in order to anticipate these months where you might see a small dividend. Now, when we're looking at my overall portfolio, as I mentioned, I don't just hold YMAX. I hold a bunch of other Yieldmax ETFs, and I'm currently trying to grow those positions, as you can see. But when we're looking at them, you can see they're also fairly inconsistent, with BABO starting at 70 cents, going up to $1.30, back to 80 cents, back to 72 cents. So you could see all the distributions are all over the place. And I do think the more Yieldmax ETFs you kind of hold, it can supposedly balance that out. You could see here as well, PYPY, kind of no stranger to this as well, $1.61 dividend, and now down to a 60-cent dividend. Same thing with SQY, of course, currently at 103% dividend. And the opposite, you could see here in the months where PYPY paid a huge dividend, SQY paid a $1.27 dividend, which is not bad. but then it started to grow a little bit. It dropped down to $1.02, but then rose all the way up to $1.67. So what does this kind of tell us? This just goes to show that Yieldmax really produces some very inconsistent dividends. You don't know what you're going to get, and it all depends upon the underlying stock and how it performs for that given month. So with all that being said, what is the best kind of strategy if you were potentially looking to retire off of Yieldmax investments? I currently think it's probably buying one of their fund of funds, whether it be YMAX or YMAG. I do believe those are the most stable. They provide the most consistent returns because they hold about 20. YMAX itself, YMAG holds only 7 Yieldmax ETFs, but YMAX holds 28 different Yieldmax ETFs in the underlying, and of course produces a dividend off of those underlying ETFs. When you're buying individual Yieldmax ETFs, you're subject to potentially huge losses in both NAV erosion and in dividend distributions because you don't necessarily know what they're going to produce. But one thing as well is when you do invest in individual Yieldmax ETFs, you also are subject to potential huge dividends. So there's a trade-off. You have consistency with YMAX and you have unpredictability when buying single Yieldmax ETFs. So that's why I mentioned it's probably a good idea if you're investing in only individual Yieldmax ETFs to buy kind of a little basket. That way you protect yourself on certain months. Maybe one does bad and one does very good. SQY, 103% dividend. PYPY, a 40% dividend for the last month. And then, of course, I have ULTY. ULTY is probably, in my opinion, one that I would try to stay away from if you're looking for long-term retirement, because in terms of the past year, the NAV erosion has been pretty bad. You're looking at a 50% loss in terms of the share price. They have changed up their strategy. What they've done, I'm not necessarily sure. They've been buying 15 to 30 different underlying kind of stocks per se, and then writing their synthetic cover calls off of those. They don't own the underlying stocks. They only invest in the price returns, but they've been relatively flat for the past little while, but I wouldn't necessarily say ULTY is a sustainable Yieldmax ETF to hold for the long term, just because, you know what, just based off of previous experience, huge NAV erosion. They have been paying out really good dividends. They do pay out pretty good dividends. They are paying out close to 100% yield, if not more. I do hold them. I am actually positive in this position. It says I'm down $60, but I received more than $60 in terms of dividends, so I'm net positive. But if I were to potentially look to retire, I would definitely look for YMAX. It is the best diversified fund. It's going to give you the most consistent income, but you would need to double down. You would need to be producing way more than you would necessarily need in terms of monthly income. If you needed $5,000, you might need $10,000 or $15,000 in terms of Yieldmax in order to cover yourself when we have these down months or these low dividend payments. So if this hopefully answered the question, could you retire on Yieldmax ETFs? That is my opinion, just kind of based off my 1.5 years experience investing in these funds and these ETFs. I hope you guys did enjoy. If you did, we're up to 6,452 subscribers. Just a short video today, but hopefully it was informative. Hopefully you guys learned a little bit and my opinions on holding Yieldmax for the long term. So if you guys did enjoy, you know what to do. Please do stick around to the next video and hope to see you guys then.